Incident at the Stanley. Just this past weekend, I went to Denver to visit a friend, and something I wanted to do was go and visit the Stanley Hotel. I've been there before and had quite a frightening experience, though abstractions of the mind can trick you into believing something isn't there. However, this was different. We didn't stay overnight, but took a day tour. Its accursed history and its myth is probably scarier than the actual experience of being in the building. Anyone who knows anything about it is aware that the second and fourth floor are apparently most haunted. It was myself, my friend, and his girlfriend. Steve blew off all the accursed bullshit and just simply laughed it all off. As he walked back down, Kristen and I explored the fourth floor. At the end of the floor is a glass door leading across a restaurant, which itself led out to a veranda. As I approached it, I noticed it was being swung backwards and banging itself repeatedly on the jamb. However, there was no wind or people anywhere. When Kristen was standing next to me, she looked gobsmacked. It was hitting the frame with light pushes, and for some reason, that was more unsettling to me than if it had slammed. I grabbed a hold of the doorknob and pulled it back in place. Then we waited again. For some incomprehensible reason, I placed my hand on the knob again, and it started to turn in my hand without any weight. Something was on the other side of the door. Kristen screamed and I lunged back. We both went running down the hallway, and I felt as if something was clocking its shoes in tandem with our footsteps from behind. I can't say I've ever truly experienced the supernatural before, but after this, it seems undeniable. Sometimes I can still feel the gentle tickling in my palm as it slowly twisted itself. I don't think I'll be staying there overnight ever again. Shrieking Susan. I turned to Dan and nudged him in the ribs. Hey, did I ever tell you about Shrieking Susan? He groaned. Is this another one of your dumb ghost stories? No. Well, yeah, but this one's actually true. Dan laughed as we followed an S-shaped path through the forest, ascending a steep hill. Well, you want to hear about her or not? No, but you're going to tell me anyway. Okay, so the story goes, she was a beautiful young woman who lived just outside this forest. Several hikers passed us by as they made their way down, rushing to get home before dark. One night, she was walking home, alone, when a lady holding 2 hiking poles interrupted me. It's getting dark, fellas, and the path's a bit tricky up ahead. You should probably... Say, are you guys twins? Dan and I gave each other a look that said, not again. He turned to the lady. No, we both just so happen to be in this exact same spot at the exact same time and look exactly alike. Crazy, huh? She shook her head and walked off, muttering under her breath. I picked up a rock and threw it at a hedge. Several birds took off. Anyway, Susan was walking home when she realized somebody was following her, and she started running along this exact trail. She made it all the way to the top of the hill where, let me guess, Dan interjected. She made it all the way to the top where the man bashed her skull in or strangled her, and now her tortured spirit wanders the forest every night, searching for the man who killed her. Am I close? Well, yeah, but you took all the suspense out of it. We reached the top of the hill where I threw down my pack, took out a Halloween mask, and slipped it on. Dan rolled his eyes. That would have scared me more if I hadn't just watched you put it on. Oh, I'm not wearing this to scare you. I'm wearing it so Susan won't recognize me. Now it was completely dark. Somewhere behind us, a twig snapped. Dan spun around. There's something there, he stammered. Of course there is. It's Susan, and she's about to exact her revenge. See, Dan, there's a reason I know about her. A shadowy figure crept between the trees. It's because I was her attacker. From beyond the trees, there came a piercing shriek. And rather than risk bumping into her somewhere down the line, I thought it would be safer to help her spirit find peace. Dan's jaw dropped as a ghastly figure with bone-white skin and dark, sunken eyes stepped onto the path. He traveled backward until he tripped over an exposed tree root and fell. Then Shrieking Susan charged towards him, arms outstretched. Wait! Dan screamed, pointing at me. It's him! He's the one who... Before he could finish, Susan's long fingers closed around his throat. The scratching. Once again, I find myself within the confines of my bed. Their infernal, unending scratching at the walls assaults my eardrums, digging its way into my nervous system and driving me further into my insanity with each passing second. I have no idea how long they've been torturing me this way, but it feels like an eternity. It started with the scratching, but soon they began to wail and moan. Their muffled cries now resonate from within the walls, filling every nook and cranny with sound. I've tried everything to drown them out. Earplugs, music, television, sleeping pills. Even tried just getting good and hammered a couple of times, but to no avail. I simply laid in my bed, watching the room spin and drowning in their mournful cries. It's been entirely too long since I've gotten even a shred of sleep. Even if I do somehow manage to drift off, I am always awoken by a particularly loud shriek or the pounding of their angry fists. There is no rest for the wicked, I suppose. But there will be. You see, I think I've finally figured out why they continue to pound, scratch, and wail at my walls. It's because they've not been given a proper burial. Well, I plan to change that post-haste. I believe that once they're finally put to rest, I will truly be free. Despite my unfortunate circumstances, the show must go on. I will use this failure as a learning experience, a springboard into a brighter future. My next victims shall not suffer the same fate, languishing between these crumbling walls, and I shall rest undisturbed forevermore. Jackson's View Hotel, Paranormal Investigation. Jackson's View Hotel loomed in front of me, and one glimpse at the Gothic edifice told me that they were right about this place being haunted. After parking in the empty lot, my girlfriend and I began to unpack. Technically, the equipment belonged to Susie, not me. Her family's well off, and she's interning at a law firm in Chicago. I'm grateful that she's helping me with my hobby, and I'm really hoping to get the footage I came for. There are countless nameless ghosts here, but I was looking for Tommy, who floats. They say he was a cook in the 40s who drowned in the pool one morning. He was only 19. No one in the ghost hunting community had gotten footage of him, but I was confident I could catch him. The first spot I picked was the pool, where he died. I set up the tripod so it overlooked the empty basin and its surroundings. Next was the kitchen, which I easily found. The maintenance guy didn't bother with locking doors. I placed a lamp on a dusty countertop and left the camera to record. The final spot was room 121, Tommy's home. Unfortunately, my third camera was broken. I convinced Susie to let me use her phone instead, since mine was dead. After that, we drove away to get some Chick-fil-A and pass the time. We came back at 4 to check the footage and retrieve the cameras. When I got to the pool, I groaned. I must have put the tripod too close to the edge, and it fell. The lens was cracked and it wouldn't turn on. Tough luck. The camera in the kitchen was fine, though, but when I skimmed through and fast forward, there was nothing. No movement at all. Strike 2. I was passing by the front entrance when Susie called. "Randy, where the hell were you? It's been hours. I'm late for my meeting," she shouted. I was stunned. Hours? What meeting? "The meeting I was reminding you of all morning, asshole. Just get my phone and let's go." I hurried down to 121 and opened the door. Her phone wasn't there. I looked all over, but couldn't find it. "So you're telling me," she said when I got back, "that you made me wait outside this shithole for hours, got me late for my meeting, and now I can't even call my boss? Find your own way home." She stormed out to the van. I started to follow after her, but she was already gone. While I stood there in the lobby, speechless, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and nearly swallowed my tongue. His cook's jacket hung ragged and wet. His wrinkled feet, white and waterlogged, floated inches above the ground. In his outstretched hand was Susie's phone. His eyes, swollen near shut, beckoned at me to take it. I did without thinking. Tommy gurgled wetly. He winked, then disappeared, leaving me in total silence again. My old house is haunted. My sister came out with this story only weeks ago, so this is her story. Back in 2020, around Mayish, she was in a bathrobe, scrolling through Instagram, waiting for her shower to heat up. She then looks up to see her towel, hanging on the door, moving. It didn't sit right with her, There was no falling objects around, and the fan was off. She was creeped out, but tried to be logical. After she showered, she went downstairs and said to our mom, "There must be a ghost in the house." What Mom said back to her made her blood run cold. "Oh, you've seen it too?" My mom had seen ghostly things in the house for 3 years. Shadows moving on the walls, appliances turning on randomly, and the doorbell ringing in the middle of the night and throughout the day. I've heard the doorbell ring randomly as well, only I chalked it up to a malfunction in the electrical system. We sold that house 2 months later. Welcome to the Eternal Inn. We hope you enjoy your stay. For the optimal experience, we suggest adhering to the few short rules below. We, unfortunately, cannot take responsibility for any transgressions. Number 1. Breakfast is complimentary and lasts from 7 to 10 each morning. If you have dietary restrictions, let us know, and we'll whip something up just for you. Number 2. TV is a great way to pass the time. However, if you stumble across channel 0, 19, or 73, please turn it off immediately. If you hesitate, they might find a way in. Number 3. If you hear a knock on your door between 12:39 and 2:12, loudly declare that you're preoccupied and ask them to come back later. They aren't human, but won't harm you after 8 a.m. Number 4. You may notice that the layout of your bathroom is suddenly mirrored. Go to the front desk and ask for a different room. Number 5. Never look up for more than a few seconds. This hotel is shared with others who don't like being seen. Number 6. Take a picture of your room immediately. If you get the sudden feeling that something's wrong, you're no longer safe. Refer to your picture and let the front desk know what's changed. Something has. I jolted awake, covered in layers of cold sweat, unable to shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The clock on my nightstand keeps flashing 3:17. The lamp illuminates the rule sheet with a pale yellow glow. I've always been scared of the paranormal, so as soon as I entered and read the rules, I followed them to a T. I already told the knocking being to come back later and haven't touched the TV or bathroom door. I don't even know what the ceiling looks like. It was now time for the last rule. Rule number 6. The wallpaper had the same floral pattern. The sofas remained unmoved. Even the small cobweb under the AC was identical. After studying the entirety of the room for a few minutes, with the obvious exception of the ceiling, nothing seemed out of place. Yet, I couldn't get over the feeling I was missing something. As I climbed back in bed, I think back to when I arrived. I checked in, lumbered to my room, and dragged my suitcase in the closet. I changed, read the rule sheet, and ensured I reviewed each one. I planned on breakfast at 9, decided against the TV, and rehearsed what I'd say if I heard knocking. After reviewing the next 4 rules and taking the pictures of my room, I forced myself asleep. Wait, that can't be right. I glance over at the rule sheet and finally notice it. There were 7 rules I had to follow. Breakfast, TV, the knock, the bathroom, looking up, the pictures, and something else. The same thoughts kept pounding in my head, almost deafeningly. What was rule number 7? Why can't I remember what it was? What happened to rule number 7? Oh, you broke it. Mausoleum, March 22nd, 2022, Jacksonville, Florida. Marcus D. was working a day shift at his local graveyard as a groundskeeper one afternoon. He would have to collect dead flowers, cut grass that's grown too long or wild, and trim bushes and trees, occasionally mopping up the marble mausoleums. The graveyard held 9 of these structures that would hold up to 100 bodies per structure. Part of the duties were to sweep, wash, and wax the floors, along with taking the dead flowers to dispose of. He was doing this duty one afternoon, and all was pretty normal that day. But when he starts hearing a noise coming from the back of one of the mausoleums, he decided to investigate. Making his way around the different corridors and turns, he could hear a faint voice echoing from within. And when he reached the back of the building, no one was there. He turned around to make his way back out, but that's when he heard the voice again, making a groaning noise, as if someone was in pain. Feeling a little spooked out, he tried his best to locate the voice, but that's when curiosity turned to horror. The groaning voice was coming from one of the tombs. Pressing his ear against the stone, he hears a woman crying from within. Immediately he backed off and made his way out from the mausoleum, calling his supervisor right away on his cell phone, telling him what he had heard, and within 10 minutes he showed up. The two went back into the mausoleum, and just by taking the first step inside, the two could hear the woman crying, sobbing, and screaming from the entrance. Skeptical, the supervisor went to the back to investigate himself, as Marcus stood by the doors, refusing to go any further. Soon after, the supervisor came back horrified that he couldn't find the source of the sound coming from anywhere else besides the tomb. The two left the mausoleum and called the police. Soon after they had arrived, the officers had come to find that the story they were told was true, and they too were astounded, puzzled, and not ashamed to admit that the noise was coming from the woman B. Jonas's tomb. No one knew how to handle the situation, since they had never experienced anything quite like this. Inexperienced and scared, pale as a ghost themselves, they stood by the doors, hearing faint cries coming from within. The night went on, and seemingly the screaming and pain coming from within only seemed to get more aggressive. The noises were followed by a banging noise, as if she was shaking or trying to get out from the marble stone tomb, which only made matters worse for everyone sitting outside, having to listen to the horrible sound. 2 pairs of officers now stood with Marcus and the supervisor, along with a few other people who wanted to see what the commotion was, all listening from the cries within. 6 a.m. The sun was just barely rising when the supervisor had just come back from a drive, and out from the passenger side came a priest, Father McDermott, a friend of the supervisor's. A more drastic measure had to be taken, and this seemed like the only logical choice. If someone was to do something, then it had to be the priest. Father McDermott entered the mausoleum along with one brave enough officer and Marcus. Making their way to the back of the building, Father McDermott praying and spraying holy water along the way, as the officer and Marcus followed behind. But as they got closer to B. Jonas's tomb, the noise and banging only got louder as they approached. Father McDermott began praying over the stone marble, blocking the casket within. Hearing it shake violently, which barely unnerved the priest, Marcus praying alongside McDermott as the officer held the flashlight, watching the whole thing unfold as he kept his radio on so the people outside waiting could hear. For nearly 20 minutes, the two prayed, reading passages from the Bible, trying what they could, splashing holy water on the marble. Soon after, the voice within started to quiet itself, as did the banging and shuffling coming from B. Jonas's tomb. Gradually the noise came to a complete stop, which gave a sigh of relief to the priest, Marcus, and the officer. Making their way outside to the silence of the people watching, the three make their exit in stunned silence. The supervisor approaches Father McDermott. What was it? Wiping the sweat from his forehead as he clutched his Bible and replied, "This was a manifestation. Something that wasn't supposed to be there came to make trouble. It's gone now. But if this happens again, then call me. You have my number." By the time the sun had risen, everyone went their separate ways, having not spoken a word about what had taken place in that mausoleum. Once or twice a week, the noise would happen again, and Father McDermott would return to put the spirit to rest, and it still happens to this day. No one knows why or how this happens. Neither knows the real location of the graveyard where this takes place. All anyone knows is that it's a frequent happening and some come to witness it. Those who do have claim to feel an uneasy feeling when being near the mausoleum, and also hear the screams of B. Jonas. Time will only tell what's really going on, and when an explanation can be found, they will find the horrible truth of what it really is and what causes her to scream within her tomb.